Hi there, guys. Looking forward to reading your reflections on school salaries and teacher status and salary. Those are due in the next couple of days. And within the next day or so, the Getting a Job module is going to open up as well. So I figured I would start to kind of talk to you about that particular module today and the expectations that I would have for you within the framework of the assignment to do there. So from the course website, you're going to go to the module that says Getting a Job, and there's quite a few things in here, and quite honestly, there's quite a few things involved in getting a teaching job. So let me just run down the module itself real quick and kind of show you what's here. The first thing that you see is this resume, and cover letter basics from Career Services. I think this is a website. And as you go to that, just some resume basics, lots of resources and things that you've got here, related articles about creating good resumes, same stuff with cover letters. And they've got some samples of both resumes and cover letters on this website. So that first link links to that site. The second link is a PDF. When you click it, it opens up into this document. It's got, again, some sample resumes and cover letters, quite a few actually, and then it's got some kind of tips and techniques that you want to use to kind of go through. The third link on here is a presentation, actually, that's given by Mr. Travis Klein. This will click on a YouTube link. It's about a 25, 30 minutes, somewhere there. And 25 or 30 minutes, actually 27 minutes and 24 seconds presentation from Mr. Klein about how to build an effective resume. I would highly encourage you to listen to that. He's got a lot of good techniques. This link specifically is geared toward education. So you can kind of take a look at that at your leisure and design that resume based on that presentation. And again, a PowerPoint that Mr. Klein has done for the School and Society class in the past. My suspicion is that this particular PowerPoint will match at least most of what is in this Career Services presentation. I haven't looked at the PowerPoint for a little bit of time. It may not quite match it, but I bet it'll be pretty similar. Here's a sample cover letter and a sample resume. These are both from me. This is a cover letter that I wrote quite a few years ago. You can judge it as you will. I did not get a job with this particular cover letter, but I have gotten jobs with cover letters similar to this in the past. And this is a sample resume that I believe is mine also from a few years back. There's a lot of stuff in this particular resume that you will hear that is not good to do in the presentations, and there are some problems with this resume as far as that goes. Lots of white space, and in particular, this resume, the way that it shows up on this screen is not formatted correctly. Even though it's formatted correctly when you print it out, it's not formatted correctly for an electronic screen. So there's some things in here that are off with this resume. But if you're looking for just a kind of a start, there's some samples from somebody that's actually been out into the field. So now, the first couple of assignments that are due for this course, for this module, are rough drafts of a cover letter and of a resume. As I'm recording this, it is September 14th, and the module is going to open up later tonight. And so you'll have about a week to kind of put together just a rough draft of your resume and cover letter. It does not have to be perfect. It does just have to be done. Okay, so that's September 21st. My suspicion is that some of you have the resume put together from maybe previous courses or just things that you've done. My suspicion is that very few of you have a cover letter. And so again, this is just I'm forcing you to kind of have these things on hand in about a week. So kind of spend some time and looking through the materials that I showed you to put those together. If you have questions or want a little bit of help with that, I certainly am available to help you out. Just contact me via email, and we can set up a Zoom time, or you can come in and visit me in my office face-to-face, or we can meet somewhere else and I can help you through the things you have questions about. You might also think about contacting career services in the administration building, and they may have some things to say to you as well, or a combination thereof. But I'm certainly willing to help you out as far as just the rough draft and of both of those things. So those are due the 21st. And if you click on these, I don't think there's anything in particular in here. It's just literally you're going to submit a rough draft of a cover letter that you've written, and the resume is the same thing. The next thing due September 25th is your philosophy of education. Now, in the face-to-face version of this class, this was a much more in-depth assignment that we did. Quite honestly, I can't think of a way to replicate in the online version of this class the stuff that we did with this face-to-face. So I've just kind of taken it, and I still want you to do it. And maybe you have a resume, or excuse me, a philosophy of education that you've written long ago. That's fine if you want to dig that back out and dust it off. But here's the deal. And here's why. So let me just go through the assignment first and tell you why I want you to do this. So in 500 words or less, brevity is a good thing. Describe your own philosophy of education. You can write your philosophy any way that you would like, but you must include statements addressing the following things. What is the teacher's role in education? What are students' roles in education? What is the role of relationships in education? What is the purpose of curriculum? And how should a teacher enforce discipline? Or maybe a better way to put that would be, how are some ways that a teacher would effectively manage a class? Okay, so the reason I have you talk about these 5 things specifically in your philosophy of education is, quite honestly, when you go out and do interviews, and most of you within the next several months are going to be out there doing interviews, guarantee you, 100% guarantee you that these 5 categories, the teacher's role in education, the student's roles in education, the role of relationships, the purpose of curriculum, and how should a teacher enforce discipline, all of those categories are going to be categories of questions that you get asked in your interview, okay? So the reason that we do this philosophy is so that you can kind of prep those answers for yourself. You have them on hand, you've written about them, you kind of know what your thoughts are on each of those particular categories. And the questions may vary from interview to interview, but the categories are going to be pretty firm. You're going to hear questions from those categories in every interview that you do. Okay, so that philosophy of education is due the 25th of September. The cover letter final copy and resume final copy, that's going to be due September 28th. Okay, so again, today's September 14th as I'm recording this. That gives you 2 weeks, essentially 1 week to put together the rough draft and then another week to kind of refine it. I'm going to give you feedback on your rough drafts as you turn them in, and you can use that as you will. These ultimately are your resumes and cover letters, so you can do with them whatever you want. If you think that the feedback I give you isn't warranted, hey, that's fine. It's not my resume or cover letter. And the same deal is, I'm going to show you some random groups that you've been placed in the framework of the class here in just a few moments. I would encourage you to actually share your resume and cover letter in those groups and let your classmates give you feedback, or if you have people that maybe aren't in the class that are your go-to people, just get some feedback on your resume and cover letter. Take it to career services. Highly encourage that. They are wonderful. But the final copy of your cover letter and resume is due September 28th. And the reason I make it due September 28th is that on September 29th is the career day, Northwest Career Day. And that will actually, it'll be in person. There'll be people here in person. You can also do that virtually. If you would like a link to that, I think maybe you've gotten that already, but I might be wrong on that. So I'll try to put a link or a way to find out how you can get to that, those virtual events. I'll try to put that on our course website. But September 29th is the career fair, the career day, and there'll be quite a few schools that are represented there. So I want you to have your resume done by September 28th so that you can kind of bring that along with you if you choose to go to the career fair. Okay, so let's kind of recap some of the stuff here. The cover letter and the resume rough drafts are due September 21st. Your philosophy of education, specifically addressing those 5 categories of questions, is due September 25th. Your final cover letter and resume copies are due September 28th. After I'll give you some feedback, you can I mean, quite frankly, if you want to turn the same copy in that you turned in for your rough drafts, you're welcome to do that, because again, it's your resume and your cover letter. You need to be comfortable with it. And if you don't think that the feedback is helpful or warranted, you don't have to use it. So the points are going to be there if you turn it in. That's the basic thing. Okay, so the kind of the overarching assignment then that all of this stuff is leading up to in this particular module is I'm going to ask you to practice interviewing for a teaching job. And you can click on this page here, and there's just some interview etiquette and interview tips, a little humorous video about bad interviews. I would say that you probably don't want to do the things that you see in this particular video. Northwest Career Services interview tips, preparing for an interview the right way, and the mock interview assignment. So you can get to it through this page, or the mock interview assignment is also available just in the module itself. So I'm going to click on that. It says mock interview. Notice the due date for this is October 5th, and it's a 50-point assignment. And so basically what it's going to be is this, and I know that you can read this, but I'm just going to read through this so that we kind of have the basics of what we want. In your randomly assigned interview group, and I'll show you those randomly assigned groups here in just a second, you will practice being interviewed and interviewing others. In the groups, one person will be interviewed at a time, while the other members of the group will divide. It says 10 interview questions among themselves, and I'll show you some potential sample questions here in a second. If it ends up being more than 10, that's fine. Probably less than 10 is not okay. The interview questions, at least one version of your interview questions, are located at the bottom of this assignment page. Each interview should be recorded so the interviewee can watch his or her interview later and reflect on it. Okay, so I don't need to see the recorded interview, but I want you to actually go back and watch your recorded interview to do some reflection on that. And I'll show you the questions here in just a second. So to that end, in the past, we've gotten people together face-to-face to do these interviews, and you're certainly welcome to do that as long as they're recorded. You can do them via Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or whatever. Honestly, it might not be a terrible thing to do that for a variety of reasons this time. One is, the idea of social distancing and keeping each other safe. The other thing is you may actually end up doing some interviews via Skype or via FaceTime or via Zoom. And so it might honestly be a good idea to practice doing those things just from a pure like technological standpoint, so that you're used to how to manipulate some of the equipment in that framework. I don't care how you do it, just make sure that you record the interview so that you can listen to it later on. As the interview progresses, the interviewers will consider the answers offered by the interviewee. After the interview concludes, the interviewers and interviewee will look at the attached interview rubric, which is right here. You can click on that and open it up, and have conversations about where the interviewee might be placed. So I'll open that up now just so you can kind of see it. First impressions, interview content, interview skills and techniques, and then kind of the closing part of that. So there's no grade associated with this, but just a rubric that you guys can kind of base some conversations around. There's the idea of the excellent interview, the average interview, and you might need some improvement on that. So those are things to look at in terms of the interview itself, and you and your group mates can have that discussion. I do not need to have any insight into that discussion between you guys yourselves, but I do need a reflection from the individual at a later time. So, and that's what this next section is about. It says, at a later time, the interviewee will view his or her own interview and write a reflection based on the following questions drawn from the interview rubric. Did you make a good first impression? And we're going to assume for the purposes of this interview that you're dressed in the perfect outfit, with the understanding that it might not really be true. Again, I'm not going to see this particular interview that you actually do, so you can wear your pajamas for all I care. But understand that there's a way to dress effectively when you move in for an actual interview, and that includes if you're on Zoom. By the way, you still need to dress up at least where they can see you in your Zoom interviews. Second question, how well were you able to answer the questions that were asked of you? What questions were the easiest for you to answer? Which questions were the hardest? Why do you think that might be? So reflect on that. Did you practice appropriate interview skills in terms of eye contact, grammar, talking speed, and avoidance of and as I say and right there. But I noticed that also when I reflect back on some of the either appropriate or maybe needs work skills. I do tend to speak faster than is advisable sometimes. So those things are what you might want to notice in how you do those interviews. And then overall, how successful were you in conveying your interest in the position? Might be kind of hard, again, in our mock interview because there's not an actual position to be interested in, and yet it is kind of necessary to fake it till you make it in that way. Okay, so again, it is not necessary to submit the interview recording. The thing that will generate the points for this assignment is the reflection based on the recording. I do reserve the right to ask for the recording should I have any questions about your reflection or the interview process in general, so I would not delete your recording until you receive your final grade for the project. After that, go ahead and delete away. But until you receive the final grade, please don't delete. There may be some questions that I have. One time in the past, just only once, the people didn't do the interview and you know, pain ensued, you know, on my part and on theirs. So actually do the interview and actually watch back over it and actually reflect on what you've done. It's an assignment that's going to help you out in the long run, I promise. Okay, so here are some potential sample interview questions. And if we go back again to those 5 categories in your philosophy, many of these questions are based on those philosophy questions that you have already answered. You know, this one is pretty ubiquitous. That will likely be the first question that you get in any interview that you do that tell us a little bit about yourself. And likely the last question in your interview is always going to be, you know, what kind of questions do you have for us? So as far as the first question goes, you know, have a little spiel about yourself. Maybe not overboard, but not necessarily vague either. So just give information related to yourself, and specifically how it is that you came to education and maybe why you want to teach and why the school that you're interviewing at would be a good fit for you. The questions, the 10th question, what questions do you have for us? I'll guarantee you that you'll, you know, on almost every interview be asked that question. And it's probably a good idea to have 1 or 2 questions. You can talk salary or benefits. You can talk about, you know, expectations of when you start the day. You can talk about, you know, what kind of written curriculum does the school have set up already? Yeah, a lot of questions that you can throw out there. But in general, you kind of you turn the tables a little bit in a positive way on the interviewers, and essentially you are kind of interviewing them to see if their school is a good fit for you. And that's fair. That's fair for you to do. Now, one thing I would say, these are the questions that we've always used for these interviews in the past, and you're welcome to use them. However, over the last few weeks, I've gone out and have been able to find some actual legitimate sample teacher interview questions from different school districts around the state of Missouri, and I think some of these are from Kansas as well. So you can take a look at these questions as a group when you get your groupings together, and if you think that there's a particular set of questions here that you might want to work from that are better than the other sample interview questions, you're welcome to use those. From what I can see of these, the categories, remember those categories that you've done in your philosophy of education, those 5 categories are represented in all of those sets of questions. There is a PDF of teacher interview questions from I think this is from the Kansas City Public School District. This is an actual human resources document from Kansas City Public School, and there are some sample interview questions here. So if you're angling for a job at, you know, KCPS, you might actually use this particular document to go off of because it's the document they use, or at least they've used in this past year, to talk to teacher candidates in the interview process. Okay, so that's a lot over the last about 20 minutes or so. But again, to kind of wrap up what my expectation is here, the 21st are those cover letters and resume rough drafts. The 25th is the philosophy of education. The 28th is the final copy of the resume and cover letter, so that on the 29th, if you choose, this is not something you have to do, but if you choose, you can go to the career fair on September 29th. And if you would all have time to do it, you know, why wouldn't you do it? Potentially you could snag a job that day, you know. The big assignment then is due October 5th. That's the interviewing for the teaching job. And I said that I would show you your groups. So what you need to do to find the groups, go to People section of the course website, click on this thing called Interview Groups, and here they are in all of their randomly assigned glory. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, and Group 4. Group 1 has 4 people, Bailey, Spencer, Dustin, and Alicia. Group 2 is Brenna, Kayleen, and Brandon. Group 3 is Michaela, and Natalia. That is an interesting randomly assigned group. I would confuse all of your names with each other. So hopefully, I'm sure you know who you are. But Nicholas, Sarah Ann, and Titus are in group 4. So most of the groups have 3. One of the groups has 4. Again, what you're going to do is, if you choose, you can critique resumes and cover letters in the framework of your groups, but you definitely have to get together in some way, face-to-face, Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, whatever, to do that mock interview process. And the reflection is individual. The reflection is not from the group. The reflection is individual. And that's how the points are going to come from this particular module. So if you have any questions for me, please do not hesitate to contact me via email or stop by my office, whatever. I will try to get back with you as soon as I can. I am hopeful that this has opened this module up in such a way to explain it clearly. And I'm hopeful that you guys are all staying safe and that your semester is running as absolutely well as it can be. Take care, you guys, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.